"You're going to rot in here. The only way you're leaving is feet first." My own son's words cut through me like knives as he shoved me into the old lake house. The sound of the telephone crashing to the floor was the last thing I heard before the lock clicked from outside. James had destroyed my only connection to the world, leaving me trapped like a caged animal. My name is Margaret, and at 66, I never imagined my story would end this way. For 40 years, I believed I had built a loving family through sacrifice and devotion. After my husband abandoned us when James was 8, I worked as a seamstress, my hands growing rough from endless hours of sewing to support our home. James became my entire world, my reason for living. I remember the rainy Tuesday when James came home crying because kids mocked his torn shoes. That night, I counted every dollar I'd saved for a new dress and bought him the finest sneakers instead. His smile was worth more than any clothing I could have owned. This became my pattern, every overtime hour, every sacrifice, all for him. When James turned 16, I worked double shifts for his motorcycle. At 21, I mortgaged my house to pay for his engineering degree. I never complained, believing a mother should give everything for her children, expecting only love and respect in return. After graduation, James got an excellent job. I felt immense pride watching him leave each morning in his suit, briefcase in hand. "My son is a successful professional," I tell neighbors with genuine joy. During those first years, our relationship seemed perfect. He visited regularly, took me to nice restaurants, and expressed gratitude for my sacrifices. Everything changed when he met Sarah. The first time James introduced her, something inside me recoiled. Sarah was 32, tall with perfectly styled hair and a smile that never reached her eyes. She worked as a clinic administrator and made it clear she considered me beneath her social standards. Despite my efforts to connect, cooking her favorite meals, buying thoughtful gifts, learning sophisticated recipes, every gesture met with fake smiles and sarcastic comments that James either ignored or didn't notice. "Margaret, don't go to such trouble," Sarah would say in that syrupy voice that set my teeth on edge. We're not children anymore. But I could see the contempt in her eyes, the disdain for the old woman who had raised the man she now considered her property. The wedding cost over $20,000, organized entirely without my input. When I suggested including family traditions, Sarah looked at me like I'd suggested something ridiculous. "Margaret, dear, this is a modern celebration. Our guests wouldn't appreciate those antiquated customs." James, who once defended me from any slight, simply nodded and changed the subject. On their wedding day, I sat in the front row wearing a discount store dress, feeling invisible as I watched my son promise forever to a woman already pushing me away. That night, while cleaning dishes, I overheard Sarah and her mother in the backyard. "Now that we're married, we need clear boundaries," Sarah was saying. "James is too soft with his mother. She thinks she can keep controlling his life, but those days are over." "You're right, darling," her mother replied with cruel laughter. A meddling mother-in-law can ruin a marriage before it starts. I stood frozen behind the window, each word feeling like a slap. The woman I'd tried to love like a daughter was already plotting to cut me from my son's life. The following months confirmed my fears. James's visits became sporadic, always with Sarah, always brief. Conversations grew tense and superficial, constantly interrupted by Sarah's subtle but hurtful comments. "James, don't forget dinner with my parents," she'd say whenever my son seemed to enjoy our conversation. Or worse, "Honey, your mother looks tired. Maybe we should go so she can rest." The first time James spoke to me with contempt was 3 months after his wedding. I'd prepared his favorite pot roast, eagerly awaiting his weekly visit. When he arrived alone, I hoped for quality time together, but something in his eyes had changed. "Mom, we need to talk," he said coldly. "Sarah and I think it would be better if we had more space. Your constant visits are affecting our marriage." "Space? You only come once a week. How can that affect your marriage?" "That's exactly the problem," he exploded. "I'm all you have. Don't you realize how smothering that is? I can't keep being responsible for your happiness." His words pierced my heart. The son I'd sacrificed everything for was telling me I was a burden. "I never asked you to be responsible for my happiness. I only asked you to love me as I've always loved you." "Love shouldn't be a prison," he retorted, clearly repeating Sarah's words. "I have a new family now, new priorities. I can't keep living to please you." That afternoon, James left without finishing the meal I prepared with such love. For the first time, I wondered if sacrificing so much had been worth it. Visits became even more infrequent, every 2 or 3 weeks, always with Sarah controlling every conversation. During one visit, she announced, "James and I are buying a bigger house in a gated community with better security and a higher class of people." The way she emphasized higher class while looking directly at me made her meaning clear. "What about this house?" I asked, referring to my home where I'd raised my son. "It's yours, Mom," James replied indifferently. "We won't need it anymore." The house he'd considered home for 30 years was now just something he wanted to discard, an uncomfortable reminder of his humble past. Things worsened when Sarah got promoted, and they hosted a celebration dinner at their new mansion. I wasn't invited. I discovered this when I called James to ask for help getting to the doctor. I had concerning test results and was frightened. "I can't, Mom. Sarah has an important dinner with work colleagues. It's crucial for her career." "Can't you take me before the dinner?" "It would only be an hour. I need to help Sarah prepare. Can't you ask one of your friends?" "What friends?" I'd been so focused on him that I'd neglected my own social life. I went to the doctor alone. The results were benign, thank God, but sitting in that waiting room surrounded by women accompanied by their families made me feel the deepest loneliness of my life. Months passed with James only appearing when he needed something: document storage, specific dishes to impress Sarah's bosses, money for unexpected expenses their new lifestyle demanded. "Mom, could you lend me $5,000? It's for Sarah's car down payment. Hers broke down and she needs something more elegant." $5,000 was nearly all my savings, but I couldn't refuse my son. He promised to repay me in 3 months. That promise was never kept. The breaking point came during a terrible flu that left me bedridden with high fever. At 66, my body no longer recovered as it once did. I called James, hoping he could take me to the doctor, or at least check on me. "I can't come. Sarah and I have an appointment with the city's most sought-after architect for kitchen remodeling. It took months to get this appointment." "James, please, I feel really sick and I'm afraid I might faint." "Can't you call a neighbor?" "Sarah says independent adults should handle themselves without constantly depending on others." "I'm your mother, James. Since when am I others to you? Don't be so dramatic." "It's just flu. Have some tea and rest." He hung up without goodbye. I lay in bed, shivering with fever, feeling something die inside me forever. My neighbor Betty, a 70-year-old widow, cared for me during those 2 weeks. James never called once to check if I was alive. When I recovered, I made a life-changing decision. I could no longer be the pleading mother begging for attention from a son who clearly despised me. I had to reclaim my dignity. The first test came when James called as if nothing had happened. "Mom, could you make that lasagna Sarah loves? Her parents are coming for dinner." For the first time in 30 years, I said no. "I'm sorry, James, but I can't. I have other plans." The silence was deafening. "Other plans?" "What kind of plans could you possibly have?" "My own. I'm no longer available every time you need me, especially after you didn't care if I was dead during my illness." "Don't start with your drama," he yelled before hanging up violently. But for the first time in months, I felt relief. 3 weeks later, James showed up unannounced with Sarah, fury written across his face. "We need to talk," he said, pushing past me. "First you hang up on me, then refuse to help with a simple meal. Now neighbors are saying you're bad-mouthing us. Betty told her sister, who told the market lady, that you said I was an ungrateful son who abandoned his sick mother." Sarah intervened with feigned concern. "Do you realize the damage this could do to James's reputation?" "Your reputation?" I asked James directly. "That's your biggest concern? Not that your mother felt abandoned when she needed you most?" "Eleanor, you're 66 years old," Sarah burst out before James could respond. "It's time you grew up and stopped behaving like a petulant teenager seeking attention." I waited for James to defend me, to remember everything I'd sacrificed, but he remained silent, staring at his shoes. I see you have nothing to say, I told James, rage replacing months of sadness. You're going to let me be disrespected in my own home. Mom, Sarah isn't disrespecting you. She's telling you the truth you need to hear. You can't keep living as the victim of everything. The victim? Am I the victim for expecting minimum respect from my son? For wanting you to care if I was dead when I had 104-degree fever? It was just flu, he shouted. You couldn't expect me to cancel my life for simple flu. It wasn't simple flu. It was your sick, scared mother asking her only son for help. The woman who worked double shifts for your college, who mortgaged her house for your career, who gave up any chance at happiness so you could have everything. Nobody asked you to do that, he replied coldly. Those were your decisions. His words hit like a physical blow. My own son was telling me that my sacrifices had been not only unnecessary, but unwanted. You're right, I said with eerie calm. Nobody asked me to sacrifice my life for you. Stupid decisions made by a woman who believed a mother's love meant giving everything and expecting nothing in return. I walked to my document table and pulled out my will, where James was sole beneficiary of everything I owned. You know what, son? You're right. My sacrifices were my decisions I now deeply regret. But this house, these savings, this inheritance you were going to receive, these are also my decisions. James's eyes fixed on the paper. What are you doing? I'm making a new decision. I no longer want a son who despises me to inherit anything from the stupid woman who sacrificed everything for him. I walked to my paper shredder and slowly fed the will into the machine. Mom, wait. James lunged forward, but too late. The document disintegrated into confetti celebrating my liberation. What did you just do? Sarah asked, her voice betraying real concern for the first time. I just did what my son asked. I stopped making decisions based on love that's clearly not reciprocated. James stared at the shredded remains, pale with shock. You can't do this. This house, your savings, I'm your only son. Exactly. You're my only son, and you just told me all my sacrifices were mistakes nobody asked for, so now I'm correcting those mistakes. What followed was a confrontation that revealed their true nature. They threatened me, demanded I reverse my decision, destroyed my phone when I tried to call for help, but I had been prepared. Unknown to them, I had spent months documenting their abuse, recording conversations, photographing evidence, building a case. I had secretly installed security cameras, learned to use modern technology they never suspected I understood. When they finally left, I called my neighbor Betty and set my plan in motion. The next day, when they returned expecting me to meekly comply with their demands to make a new will, leaving them everything, I led them to my basement. The walls were covered with evidence of their cruelty: photographs, documents, transcripts of their conversations about putting me in a home and selling my house for $700,000. A laptop showed a live video call with a lawyer, social worker Betty, and a journalist, all witnessing their confession to their plans. This is my insurance, I told them calmly. Everything you've said and done has been recorded and broadcast live to very important people. Their masks finally dropped completely. They realized they had lost everything: their inheritance, their reputations, their futures. The real will I had signed that morning left everything to a foundation for single mothers, ensuring not a cent would go to people who treat the elderly like trash. The legal process that followed was devastating for them. James lost his job when the scandal reached his supervisors. Sarah lost her clinic position. Their marriage crumbled under the pressure. 3 months later, James appeared at my door alone, defeated, aged, having lost everything. Mom, can we talk? I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, my marriage. Sarah left me. I have nothing. Now you know how it feels, I replied calmly. Now you know what it's like to lose everything because of someone who supposedly loves you. Please, I'm sorry for everything. I know I was terrible, but I'm your son. There has to be some way to fix this. For a moment, I felt the familiar temptation to comfort him, to forgive as I always had. But I had learned that forgiveness without consequences isn't love, it's cowardice. For 30 years, I forgave every cruelty because I thought that's what loving mothers do. I loved the sweet boy who hugged me during nightmares, the ambitious young man who promised to repay my sacrifices. But that boy died long ago. You're a stranger who chose greed over love, cruelty over gratitude. I can change, he cried desperately. I don't want you to change for me. If you ever change, let it be for yourself because you realize the person you became is despicable. It's no longer my responsibility to fix you. You can't abandon me. I'm your only son. No, I replied firmly. You abandoned me. I'm just officially acknowledging what happened months ago. I gently closed the door, listening to his sobs on the other side. Part of me wanted to open it, to return to being the mother who forgave everything. But the stronger part, the part that had been reborn, that had learned self-worth, stood firm. That night, as I prepared for sleep in my house that no one would ever take from me again, I reflected on everything that had happened. I had lost my only son, but I had gained something infinitely more valuable, my dignity. At 66, I had learned that self-love isn't selfishness, but survival. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty, but necessity. Sometimes the only way to save your soul is to cut the ties destroying you. I gave everything for a son who saw me as a walking ATM. But finally, I was going to give everything to the only person who truly deserved it, myself. For the first time in decades, that prospect didn't frighten me. It thrilled me.